relatively like inexpensive speaker system, and like, yeah, that still took me quite a long time to save up for.
Yeah, no, totally. And like, I don't know, I feel like I like these speakers because I know people that work with them, and I like the way their mixes or masters sound. So it must be a good set of speakers. Like I would get those based on who I've seen has them and what their mix is.
Sure.
Like you could kind of almost like with Adams, like I don't feel like I would want Adams based on things that I've heard from Adams. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah, of course.
No offense to people working on Adams, like work on whatever works for you. I think I have like this memory of like my band did demos, and in the studio they sounded so good on these Adams, and it just did not sound the same not in the studio. And so I think from that moment I've like I it could have been the room, right? But like I learned to like not trust Adam monitors. I was like, I'm not getting Adams because they didn't translate, you know?
Yeah.
In that one instance.
There's an interesting,
you know? I didn't give it enough. It's probably not enough of a. It's not a science experiment enough to say that, you know.
No, but none of these things really are. Like it's interesting because I know my room sounds great. Like we put quite a lot of time into it, and we've got lots of nice treatment, and we've measured it and all the rest of it. I'm not saying it's perfect by any stretch. It's not, but I know it. And I know it sounds really, really good. But nobody else knows it as well as me. So doing like, for example, like doing an attended session, for example, it's like, I kind of like doing it from the sort of social aspects. I like, it's a nice experience, but I'm not entirely sure how helpful it really is, because like the person who's come in to hear their record, being mastered or whatever, they're then going to take it away and hear it on the speaker system that they know and that they are used to listening to music on. Like, I don't really know what my system is telling them. It probably just sounds loud and good. So therefore it's quite exciting, but it's much more helpful for people to actually be able to listen to music on what they're used to listening to music on, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I brought these Sony 7506s, I think is the number, to my mastering session 9 years ago. And he's like, dude, I don't trust these headphones for... I was like, yeah, but these are the only ones I know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's exactly it. Like, I can't... I could tell someone that, it sounds amazing in this room, but like, yeah, if it doesn't sound amazing in their car, like everything else sounds amazing to them, then
it doesn't matter.
It's kind of, it's pointless, isn't it?
You see, do you do any what's it called? Listen to Audio Movers kind of like pseudo attended sessions at all?
No, I occasionally do them when I'm like something like album sequencing. Once the audio's been approved, and we need to sit down and sort out all the gaps and transitions and stuff like that. I'll do that remotely, which is surprisingly easy and nice. And again, I enjoy doing it. But yeah, I've never actually done like an actual... I used Audio Movers or anything like that.
Yeah, amazing. So you try to do... I guess what you were getting at is that you do everything like just kind of not in session. It's kind of like... I'll take a stab at it. If you don't like it, I'll just get back to work by myself and send you a revision.
Yeah, mostly. But that's where the communication comes in. Because if I've had, a good bunch of emails or a phone call or something beforehand, and I know where we're going, and I know what the artist is looking for, I know what they're expecting from the mastering process, then yeah, I don't do many jobs where there's tons and tons of revisions.
Yeah.
And that's not because like, hey, I'm so brilliant. It's just because of the communication.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So you're happy with your room, and you're mastering on the Neumanns. What's your are you in the box? Are you out of the box? What does your setup look like in terms of like signal flow?
I'm completely in the box.
Nice.
Like totally. I've never because I didn't come up through the studio system or whatever, it's not appealed to me in the same way that it does from people who that's how they've learned, I think. Mm-hmm. I don't really care about the sort of analog versus digital kind of discussion or anything like that. I think when people have learned on that equipment, then it's mad to change that, because that's what you know and that's what you're good at.
Mm-hmm.
And because I learned in the box, I'm quite happy to stay here.
Yeah, no,
I haven't heard. I've yet to hear an argument that's convincing enough for me to go, actually, do you know what? I need to put down the money.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that people, I'm not
no shade to people that are.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly what. No shade or anything. I nothing like that. I'm not saying that like, it's much better when I do. It's just, you do what you know and what gets the best results for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I am.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I mean, I'm not a mastering engineer, but as a mixer, I have yet to be convinced that it's worth the investment / leaving the box and the conversion to get out. And real-time bouncing. I don't know. I like my offline bounce.
Yeah, I think it's if you work in the box and work in a way that like is careful and you're paying attention to what you're doing, I mean, things like offline rendering and stuff like that. It's like, well, so I work in, I've recently started working in Wavelab.
Mm-hmm.
And that does the whole, like, you like, say if you have an album, you can render the whole album as one file so that all of your processing, like all of your plugin processing, is all baked in at 32 float point. And then from that point, you can then start, exporting it out as WAVs and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't really see, like, that to me is surely as bulletproof as an offline render, as an a real-time render. Sorry.
I'm not sure if I understand the science, but
well, I think that the point of it is, I think if you've got lots of like songs, and they've each got processing on them, when you bounce them in, like, 5 times real time or whatever, then there's a chance of things not quite catching up quickly enough, so you end up with clicks and pops at the beginning of songs and things like that, which obviously you don't get if you're doing it in real time.
Got it.
So that's, I think that's kind of what I was attempting to explain.
No, I understand. Yeah, I mean, again, like I work in Logic and I never have those kinds of artifacts. Like I don't even, like, I know people say you need to check, like I've never had an issue like that. I do think that some of the plugins that I use that kind of have variable, I don't know, things in it to kind of make it sound more analog-y, that does change, I think, a little bit. And that if you were to kind of like do the phase invert on one and the up versus the other, there would be something you would be hearing in between.
I get you. Yeah.
But I don't know if it's it's not something that you listen back to it and you can really hear a difference. You don't say like that one's better or that one's worse, but there's maybe some slight like artifacty difference, so to speak.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. But it's worth experimenting with, like real line, offline bouncing and real time bouncing.
Yeah, it is. And I think I think my whole thing is that I just want to make sure that if I'm choosing to work in the box, which at this point I am, I want to make sure that everything is absolutely as good as I can get it.
Yeah.
Like I want it to be completely foolproof. I want it to never mess up, and like, all this and whatever I can introduce into my equipment or my workflow in order to make that happen.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what that is, it's still going to be a hell of a lot cheaper than buying a couple of compressors and
absolutely.
a nice EQ.
Oh, it's just, what you're saying is that inside of Wavelab, it is a real time kind of bounce that does that 32-bit render.
Exactly. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, cool. So I just didn't fully understand the whole.
To be honest, it's quite new to me. I've only recently started working in Wavelab. It is brilliant. I've got to say, I'm a fan already.
Amazing. So in terms of, like, I guess being in the box, like, what are some of the go-to things that you find are bringing, I don't know, any tools that you find are really working for you, helping you achieve your vision in your head?
I like things to be quite quick. So kind of split my EQs up into like ones that have particular uses for particular things. I think that's been quite a nice thing to do. Because I know there's the school of thought of just like, well, you just get Pro Q3 and you can just do anything.
Right.
Which is true to a degree, but it's a bit, I just don't find it very enjoyable. Like I find EQs like that really, really great to solve problems.
Yeah.
But just to make something sound nice, like I like big broad strokes, these big kind of
the Pultex and the
yeah, exactly. Like, I love the curve bender, it's just like it's like everything you do on it just sounds great.
Yeah.
So I've kind of got a nice little workflow where like I've got about 4 or 5 EQs that each do like a particular thing really, really well. And I'll always go to them for that particular thing. Like I love the curve bender, but I don't really love the low end on it. But I really love the low end on the sort of the Marg EQ4. Like I like the bottom. I know everyone talks about the airband, but I'm not that fussed by that. But I love the low.
Yeah,
like that.
The plug-in Alliance
the 40 hertz. Yeah, that's the one.
So good.
Yeah. It's brilliant. Yeah, and I just love the low end on that. So like, low end on that, high end on the curve bender. I don't really have to think about it because I know what each of them do. So it's kind of I know. It kind of flies against. It almost flies against advice I would potentially give other people, which is like find a tool that you really like and learn it inside out. But I kind of feel like it's kind of the opposite of that. I'm like,
right,
getting an EQ and going, right, it does this one thing really well, I'm just going to do that with it. But yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of mastering engineers do that. Is they'll have like their chain of like this is what I use for this and that. Like they'll have their If it's outboard gear, then it'll be like these 6 units or whatever of outboard gear that tend to work nicely one into the other, and I'll use this for this, or I won't use this for this, or I'll just I'll make I'll do a little makeup gain in this one, and I won't necessarily crank anything. Definitely. And so you kind of just you have your go-tos, and it's like okay, it's like a workflow thing. It's just like I'm reaching for this one, but it's not too many options that you're overwhelmed. But it's like, oh,
exactly, But when you're working in the box, obviously, the potential to be overwhelmed with options is just it's there. I mean, anything you could possibly want is just at your fingertips at any time. So I think it does take quite a long time. It's taken me a long time anyway to slowly just go right to make my plugin list as small as I can. Like to make it so it's just it's just a small list of like, this is everything I need. I know what each of these things do. I know what each of them bring to the table. And within this little toolbox should be everything I need to do pretty much anything. So that's where I'm at with that.
Amazing. So tell me, what's the first thing you do when somebody sends you a song to master? Like what's your approach? What's the first thing you do?
The first thing I do is put it into RX and listen to it. And the reason I put it into RX is because you can't do anything. Like, you can't even turn it up. Like, within the program, you can use the gain plugin, but like, I put it into there so that I can just hear it. And to be honest, to see it as well, to see, I can instantly see if something's been limited heavily, or if something's gone wrong in the download or wrong in the unzipping process or whatever. So the first thing it does is go into RX, and it gets a thorough listen, and and I can just see it. I can see what sample rate is. I can see what bit depth it is. So I just get a picture of what I'm looking at,
and then you play it back. Do you take notes? Do you or is it all mental? Like, what is that? What is that first listen like for you?
So I don't take physical notes. I usually try and listen to it so once I've listened to it in RX and determined that there's no actual issues and actual problems with it, then I'll put it into Wavelab, and then as quickly as I can get it to the listening level that I know that I'm comfortable with. So I do that, and most mastering engineers do this, where they've got a set level. So I know that on my monitor controller, it needs to be right there. It never ever moves. It never changes. So